The festival was the youth of America since the mid-1950s had slowly begun to find itself and to discover the part that it was going to play in America's future. And the 1969 festival was sort of the glue that set us all about our purpose. Well, for Woodstock it meant two things. Well, for me it meant three things. For Woodstock it was very exciting because we got to see great music. Because these musicians, when they weren't playing around the world, they were playing in our clubs. The other thing was it certainly helped our economy, because many, many people would come to Woodstock to hear our great musicians. Now for me, very big challenge, because the musicians were very, very, very popular with the girls. Very hard to get a girlfriend, because they were all with the musicians. Well, the music that was made in the 1960s, certainly those were the ideals, and certainly those were the ideals of my generation. I think perhaps we may have been a little idealistic, because there's always conflict in the world, but it was certainly a very sincere feeling. And I think that when you listen to the music, you can feel the sincerity of that sentiment come through. So whenever you listen to rock and roll, I think there are two things to listen for. And one is the idealism, the hope that the next generation can bring more love and bring more peace into the world. But also remember that the foundation of rock and roll is upon much suffering and oppression, because these were the expressions of our African Americans when they sang among themselves. And when Mr. Michael Lang, decided to have a music festival and name it after Woodstock, he felt that he had to include arts in its title, because up to that point, that's what we were more famous for. We were more famous for our arts than our music. Well, if you listen to the musicians, of course, it's a double-edged sword, because it's certainly a very economic way of getting their music out. But then also, it's in the old days when everything was on a record, it was very hard to duplicate a record, but it's very easy to duplicate a CD. So I know that the musicians are very concerned about being paid properly for their efforts and their work. But the one thing that I would say to musicians everywhere is, do not abandon your skill with the instrument. Don't rely on technology, because I know recording studios can do things to music to make it sound better, or to maybe make it sound a little better than the musician may be capable of doing themselves. It is so important that people maintain the craft of musicianship. Now, I myself, I'm not a musician. I only listen to music. But I can tell the difference between an accomplished musician, someone who has really dedicated themselves to their instrument, whether it be their voice or their guitar or their drums, whatever the instrument is. But it's so important for musicians to not rely on the technology, to use the technology, but don't rely on it. Be just as capable of playing your music out on the street as you would in a recording studio. I am Jeremy, and I'm in the MTA Festival, and I hope that you will come explore it with me.